Welcome to Woking Up.
White supremacy. White supremacy is the fringe of the fringe.
This is a mini-series brought to you by Polite Conversations.
All of a sudden, we can't talk about Neanderthal DNA anymore.
Here, I'll talk about my journey into and out of being a new atheist Sam Harris fan.
In and of itself, that video is not evidence of racism.
I'm your ex-Muslim host, Ina. No, not the right-wing kind. Thank you for tuning in.
This is how the left will die.
All right. Hello, lovely listeners. So today I'm doing an episode on something I encountered over on the Hell site the other day and just had to comment on it. A lot of people were sending me links to it, and I thought you all might appreciate hearing a take. Before we get started, though, I wanted to let you know that this Woking Up, number 12, has now been unlocked. This is the whole extended episode. I hope you enjoy it. A lot of hard work goes into these episodes, so please consider supporting the show if you can. And of course, you can always listen to these specialty episodes like a month earlier too if you subscribe to the Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can access all the extended versions of the episodes, except for the premium bonuses, which you get at the premium tiers. But you even get a discount if you sign up for the annual membership. And generally, you can also help unlock these episodes much faster by leaving podcast reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It helps others find the show too, so you can help get the word out and support in this way as well. And, a nice little bonus is that you make IDW centrists cry every time you do. And we've been quite busy over at our little Patreon community. There's just so much to talk about nowadays. I don't always have the time to do an audio episode for everything, so sometimes I just write something quicker. There's been a couple of very popular posts lately that you guys might want to check out. One about the unfortunate ContraPoints take on Israel-Palestine, and another titled, Sam Harris Renews His Support for Israel's Genocide and Violence in the Region After Fans Express Frustration. I thought I'd mention those articles since they're quite relevant to the subject of this Woking Up episode. All right, so go subscribe to the Patreon for all the extras and early access to episodes like this one or the Global Far Right series. We've currently got Netherlands up on Patreon, and I think Finland is coming up next. I will link the written posts that I mentioned in the show notes. And I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. All right, are you guys ready for this installment of Woking Up? I hope you are, because it's about to start right now. And listen, I take absolutely no responsibility for your brain melting because of the sheer stupidity of Sam's takes, okay? Just want to get that out there. Listen at your own risk. I'm your ex-Muslim host, Ina. No, not the right-wing kind. Thank you for tuning in.
This is how the left will die.
All right, now let's get to today's take. Sam Harris is going around pretending like he's only just become a dedicated Zionist, and Israel supporters are so amazed and impressed by this rational genius brain who just so happens to have changed his mind completely and is now a Zionist only post-October 7th, but if you followed his garbage output, even superficially, you'll know that he's always been a slimy and enthusiastic defender of one specific ethno-state. You'll never guess which one. Surprise! It's Israel! The Western world's most beloved apartheid state. Yeah, so Sammy went on this Zionist podcast and said,
You are an atheist and Jewish. Can you tell us how that balance changed or shifted for you after October 7th?
I'm still an atheist. I'm still a secularist. I still think that we're paying an intolerable price for the religious balkanization of our world. And I think before October 7th, you could have said that I was not a Zionist. And I think before October 7th, you could have said that I was not a Zionist. You could have said that I was not a Zionist. Was not a Zionist. Not a Zionist. You could have said that I was not a Zionist, right? Or I certainly would be willing to call into question the legitimacy of organizing a state around a religion or a religiously identified ethnicity, right? Judaism in this case.
Note the slippery "you could have said it." I mean, if you put the bar for Zionism really, really high, you could say that he doesn't support everything that Israel does. Most things, sure. Even the baby killing, he always made excuses for. But, not everything, okay? So if you fudged some stuff, blurred your eyes, and really tried hard, you could have said he wasn't a Zionist before October 7th. He still criticized the settlers while refusing to interrogate or comment on the extent to which these religious extremists are supported, propped up, and straight up encouraged by the state. How much they're actually working on behalf of the state when the state doesn't want to get its hands dirty. As openly proclaimed on the recent Louis Theroux documentary on BBC by unhinged extremist settler Daniela Weiss,
we do for governments what they cannot do for themselves. Even if you take Netanyahu now, he is very happy with what we do here and also about our plans to build Jewish communities in Gaza. He's happy about it, but he cannot say it. He says the opposite. It's not realistic. Good! We will make it realistic. It's not forcing the government, it's helping the government. It's step number one in politics. You don't force the government, you give the government the courage, the ability, the public support, the political support.
Of course, the documentary is now being called anti-Semitic. Louis Theroux is being called anti-Semitic for speaking to the settlers and letting them expose just how extreme their views are in their own words. How very dare he? But anyway, one could say that Harris has been superficially critical of these types as part of his religion bad philosophy, and if they didn't look at anything else, one could somehow twist that into believing he wasn't a Zionist by some ridiculous definition.
Once I released a podcast some years ago titled "Why Don't I Criticize Israel?" and there I gave a fairly equivocal and frustrating defense of Israel.
Frustrating, was it? To defend Israel? Well, we'll look into how frustrating it was for Sam when he was supposedly not a Zionist later in the episode, but let's stick to this recent clip for now.
Frustrating defense of Israel. As someone who believes that we are paying this intolerable price for sectarianism, I was troubled by the seeming contradiction in defending the Jewish state.
Also note that his main criticism here, like a fucking teenager, does not expand beyond religion bad. How can you say that I don't criticize Israel when I say religion bad under my breath all day long? Is that not enough for you wokes?
I was troubled by the seeming contradiction in defending the Jewish state, and for me it just nets out to the only real defense is the ambient level of genocidal intolerance that's directed at Jews.
Now, do you think that the intolerance Sam Harris is talking about, the Sam Harris who censored criticism of white nationalist and Holocaust minimizer Stefan Molyneux on his own podcast, the Sam Harris who is best buds with Holocaust revisionist, but the Nazis felt bad for what they did, Douglas Murray, do you think that his perceived genocidal intolerance is actually the harmful Nazi kind of anti-Semitism, or is it just that people won't tolerate an apartheid state doing a live stream genocide? Something to really think about here. What definition of anti-Semitism makes him say this is genocidal intolerance? Hint. It's not the Nazi kind of anti-Semitism. It's the far-right definition that is basically college kids and wokes protesting the state of Israel's indiscriminately murderous actions. Keep in mind, this is Mr. I'm not at all tribal, and I certainly don't do identity politics because I meditate so much. This fucking guy who once said, even in the aftermath of a synagogue shooting, anti-Semitism isn't too much of a problem. This guy who's done creepy-ass thought experiments in his efforts to normalize race science, thought experiments about hypothetical hoarding genes in Jews. The dude who has said, Jews in part are to blame for the Holocaust. This guy is suddenly now concerned about the genocidal intolerance directed at Jews, by which he means Israel, of course, refusing to acknowledge the basic reality here that people find Israel intolerable, not genocidally so, just morally intolerable, because of all the mass slaughter. The actual beheaded babies split into halves, severed heads of children that they see come across their social media day and night for the past year and a half. That selective concern that Sam suddenly has is not about anti-Semitism, because he's fine with that, as he's shown many, many times before. It's about Western chauvinism, about imperialism, and about Israel getting to continue its mass slaughter of Muslims, which has been a Sam Harris wet dream for decades. I mean, he's really showcasing that desire out in the open now, fully mask off. And also, this complete inversion of who is doing the genocide and hurling genocidal rhetoric day and night, combining it with murderous actions and completely flipping who the actual victims of genocidal rhetoric and actions are right now. This is a thing you will see often among defenders of Israel, because that's the only way to justify what's happening. The Nazis claimed Jews were a threat to them as well. As I am recording this, there are reports of Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich saying openly that Gaza will be entirely destroyed and that the population will leave in great numbers. There are reports of a famous Israeli TV producer who has called for Israel to carry out a Holocaust against the people of Gaza. His exact quote on Twitter was, "Good morning. Let there be a Shoah in Gaza." And in another post he wrote, "I can't understand the people here in the state of Israel who don't want to fill Gaza with gas showers or train cars and finish this story. Let there be a Holocaust in Gaza." New York Times even quoted Netanyahu referring to something that is pretty much another way to say final solution. Quote, "It's time to launch the concluding moves." Remember, out of all the times to be concerned about genocidal anti-Semitism, Sam Harris chose this time, while Israel is actually carrying out a brutal genocide for all the world to see and hiding behind quote-unquote anti-Semitism when criticized for its actions. Anyway, let's see what Sam says next.
The only real defense is the ambient level of genocidal intolerance that's directed at Jews, right? I mean, and yet before October 7th, even there, I felt like I was paying lip service to the legacy of the Holocaust. My heart was really not quite in it. I was paying lip service to the legacy of the Holocaust. My heart was really not quite in it.
I mean, come on. If these hosts actually cared about anti-Semitism at all, this utterance by Sam should have set off all kinds of alarm bells. Why was he just paying lip service to the legacy of something as horrific as the Holocaust? Why was his heart not really in it? Seems like a very strange thing to say, doesn't it? Or was it because he thinks Jews are in part to blame for the Holocaust, which, he's said on numerous occasions? I mean, this is a person that should have zero credibility when it comes to his concerns about anti-Semitism, but sadly, too many defenders of Israel only care about defending Israel and conflating that with anti-Semitism, while actual anti-Semitism being on the rise under a fascist Trump presidency is of little concern to these types. See the ADL making excuses for Elon's Nazi salutes. The only kind of quote-unquote anti-Semitism they care about is leftist students speaking out against the genocidal actions of Israel.
I was paying lip service to the legacy of the Holocaust. My heart was really not quite in it because it still seemed kind of hypothetical to me. Because in my life, anti-Semitism has not seemed like a real variable at all. In my life, anti-Semitism has not seemed like a real variable at all. But given October 7th and given the response to it in the West, both on the left and on the right politically, but even most especially on the left, that was the most surprising.
Of course, what he actually has to pay lip service to is the idea that he is at all concerned about growing actual, very real anti-Semitism on the right and open white supremacy in the White House. When it's the left that keeps him up at night, year after year, even when the worst authoritarians are in power, it's wokeness and diversity and CRT that are the real issues to him. One of the criticisms he has of Trump's first term is the fact that it energized the wokes. Really? That was a thing he said, seriously. And in a very recent AMA with his equally unhinged business partner, he referenced worrying about another Trump win before the elections because he was worried it would bring about more wokeness. I mean, imagine being this afraid of wokeness and diversity at this specifically fascist moment in time. Very, very telling, I'd say. Now, the last little bit of the clip.
I'm really, just kind of an unapologetic Zionist at this point. I'm really, just kind of an unapologetic Zionist at this point. Unapologetic Zionist at this point. Who can be counted upon to defend the Jews but the Jews?
Imagine having lived through the past year and a half, witnessing and cheerleading Israel's campaign of cruelty, of babies beheaded by bombs, of their flesh needing to be carried in plastic bags, of parents saying goodbye to tiny corpses, the endless reports of systemic sexual abuse used as a weapon by Israeli torture camps, of mass starvation of a helpless and trapped population that cannot defend itself, that is being herded into smaller and smaller areas, concentrated even. Reports of journalists being hunted and burned alive, and now finally seeing it out in the open with Israeli ministers saying that the hostages are not their priority, that keeping up the mass slaughter is their focus. When it's been announced as plain as day that Israel intends to flatten and depopulate, one way or another, all of Gaza, that it intends to occupy it indefinitely, when even Western media desperate to manufacture consent for this genocide has had to finally report that the genocide forces have dropped more explosives in Gaza than were dropped on London, Dresden, and Hamburg combined during the Second World War, in only a tiny fraction of the area. When every last hospital and university has been bombed, and aid workers have been murdered and found in mass graves, when Israel has been found to be lying repeatedly about all its claims again and again and again, when x-rays of children with sniper bullets in their heads have been published, after seeing all that on repeat for 18 months, imagine if your response is, wow, well, maybe my heart wasn't in it before, but now this is certainly a project I can support. Heck yeah. I'm an unapologetic supporter of all this.
I'm really, just kind of an unapologetic Zionist at this point.
I mean, when religious symbols have been carved into the faces of abductees by Israeli forces, when the Star of David is used to desecrate cemeteries, mosques, and rip up the earth itself in Gaza, when giant menorahs are erected on top of the rubble, bones, and ashes of victims, when the outspoken atheist in you, who otherwise can't stop saying, religion bad, instead of finding that to be deeply concerning and ISIS-like, when your fucking religion bad setting turns into, oh wow, I am now an unapologetic supporter of this religious ethno-state, I mean, what the fuck does that say about you and your principles? And when he says, who can be counted upon to defend the Jews but the Jews? It's such utter bullshit, because any honest look at the critics of the genocidal ethno-state of Israel would find that some of the loudest and harshest critics of this are Jewish themselves. Because as principled people, unlike Sam, they cannot stand by a murderous state using their religion and ethnicity as cover to do some of the greatest crimes against humanity that have happened in our lifetime. Israel and its supporters should be seen, at least now, when Zionism has exposed its logical conclusion, mass murder and genocide, to maintain a demographic project of religious supremacy and racial purity, that they should be seen as the incredibly sad and twisted continuation, an echo of the horrors of the past that did not go away, in fact. If you have a problem with that statement, take it up with the many Jewish Israelis, the Holocaust survivors, and even former IDF generals, we all know how woke they can get, right? Who have drawn this exact comparison. Just imagine witnessing all this and it making you not horrified, not disgusted at the state of humanity, but deeply committed and unapologetically supportive, more supportive than ever before. It is truly alarming that one could show that level of support for a very terrorist-like state, so long as it's not a Muslim one in the West, and still be seen as a respectable member of society over here. This is a country condemned by every major human rights organization in the world, on trial right now for plausible genocide. Amnesty International sounded the alarm just a couple of days ago, saying we are watching Israel commit the world's first live-stream genocide, and it barely registered in Western media. Independent human rights organization Euromed Monitor has also recently said that Israel's brutality in Gaza surpasses all recent forms of terrorism. In a statement they put out on April 3rd, 2025, they warned that Israel's actions embody the conduct of existing terrorist organizations, even surpassing them in brutality and disregard for human life, and bear no resemblance to the conduct of a state bound by international law. That's what Sam is an unapologetic supporter of. I mean, these are things that Sam Harris is just not engaging with. It's a QAnon level of detachment from reality, but it's an acceptable one because many Western institutions rely on keeping up this illusion, this distortion, this inversion of reality to hold up the farce of Western morality and values around human rights. Remember, this is the same Sam Harris who had a fit when people were milkshaking fascists and throwing glitter on them. He was repeatedly screaming about how these were mock assassinations. The same Sam Harris also wrote an article titled In Defense of Torture, and recently wrote another Substack post praising Israel's pager attack, which killed civilians and children, titled Sometimes Violence is the Answer. It's the same Sam Harris who said sometimes when you see a few videos of Antifa, you want the far right to show up. The wildly differing stances on violence here are explained by only one thing. Their targets are different. Violence against Nazis and fascists is unacceptable to Sam. Even non-violence like milkshaking or glitter throwing is considered an assassination threat. But when the targets are Muslims or leftists, he seems to be fine with justifying and even celebrating violence. This cognitive dissonance is becoming so ridiculous that there are even rifts forming on the right around this issue. Even right-wingers can see how absurd the Sam Harris position is. Here's a clip from right-wing comedian Tim Dillon. And I may not agree with any of this guy's other politics, but on this, he's spot fucking on.
Sam Harris, who runs a meditation app, but also believes that Israel should just bomb anyone at any time that it thinks. It is hilarious to be a guy who runs a meditation app and he spends half the time telling people about breathing and how to self-actualize, and the other half of the time telling people that we need to bomb as many children as humanly possible until Israel feels comfortable. That's just an interesting archetype of person. It just is. Okay, I want everybody right now to breathe. I want you to breathe in and out.
And just take a few deep breaths.
What we need to do is indiscriminately bomb women and children. I want you to breathe in and out right now. I want you to imagine an apartment complex. There's children playing soccer outside. Now it's gone. It's gone because there were bad people in it. Now they're all gone. Now it's rubble. And I know it's sad, but it's necessary. Collateral damage. I want you to say 2 words. Collateral damage. Focus on your breathing.
It's interesting to keep an eye on these sorts of divides on the right. Like I said recently in an after show episode, that genocide is just one of those incredibly horrific crimes against humanity that even otherwise bigoted right-wingers can see is bad, or should be able to see is bad. It should not depend on politics. In a normal and healthy world, this should be something that people could condemn across the political spectrum. Like, we don't expect that progressive leftists will be the only ones to see how horrific the Holocaust was and speak out against it. Only Nazis are the types to minimize and distort and deny an atrocity of that scale. Yeah, we should be seeing the minimizers and deniers of this atrocity through a similar lens. Now, for the next Patreon exclusive part of the episode, I wanted to run through that episode that Sam Harris did in 2014 titled, "Why Don't I Criticize Israel?" that he mentioned in the clip we've been talking about. Now remember, this is from before he apparently became an unapologetic Zionist. It's from 11 years ago. So let's see how un-Zionist he actually was, eh? Straight off the bat, as this episode begins, his desperation to defend Israel at any cost is obvious, despite his claim of not really being a Zionist before October 7th that we just discussed. The episode, as I just said, is from 2014, so around the time of another murderous quote-unquote war carried out by the well-armed state of Israel. So this was a 7-week period of conflict that resulted in over 2,000 deaths of Palestinians and 6 Israeli civilians. So even there, you can see the difference of harm caused by the two sides of this conflict. The widespread violence done by Israel back then was also referred to as collective punishment by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, which, is very clear now. This collective punishment thing is a tactic preferred by Israel. And even then, an estimated 65 to 70% of the casualties were civilians. Several human rights organizations were also denied access to Gaza back then, making it pretty much impossible for them to carry out their independent investigations on site, and Israel refused to cooperate with a UN fact-finding mission that was meant to investigate war crimes allegations on both sides. They denied them access and refused to respond to a list of questions relating to specific incidents. And the state of Palestine fully cooperated with that investigation. I mean, that should tell you who had something to hide back then and who still has something to hide now. Also, back in 2014, Amnesty International said that there was mounting evidence that Israel deliberately targeted hospitals and medical personnel. The Israeli nonprofit Breaking the Silence reported that basically anyone found in the area that the IDF occupied was not a civilian. Soldiers were briefed to regard everything in the Gaza Strip as a threat. The Breaking the Silence report also cited several examples of civilians, including women, being shot dead and then defined as terrorists in later reports. Convenient, hey? How can you be doing anything wrong when you can just kill whoever you want and write that they're terrorists later? That's been a well-documented theme in the current genocide as well. Amnesty International published a report back then, which, of course, Israel dismissed and said Amnesty International was serving as a propaganda tool for Hamas. Like, we've just heard this nonsense hurled at anyone objecting to their violence now, like way, way too much to fall for it. But maybe more people did in 2014. There were 17 journalists killed during this conflict, and in many cases, killed while having clear markings distinguishing them as press on their vehicles or clothing. Are we seeing a pattern here? This is just how Israel behaves. It's the same playbook again and again and again. And that endless impunity, despite such clearly horrific conduct granted to them by Western countries, Western media most of the time, that's why we're here today, in the position of watching Palestinians beg for their lives on social media while the average person can do nothing but look on helplessly as they're executed. So, yeah, that's the backdrop of what inspired Sam to release this particular Israel defending episode, which he pointed to justify his "I wasn't a Zionist till October 7th" stance. Just to give you a little background before you hear his desperation and his nonsense excuses in this one.
I have criticized Israel and Judaism. What seems to upset many people is I've kept some sense of proportion.
Yeah, by proportion, he means an Israeli sense of proportion, like we're seeing in this genocide. Just wildly dishonest and unfathomably disproportionate.
Criticized Israel and Judaism.
And as for the religion thing, I'm just not really interested in hearing him criticize religion at all. I'm bored to death of reductive new atheist critique of religion, any religion. So I don't really care whether he criticizes Judaism at all. But one can't help but notice his endless, decades-long obsession with one particular religion, even though that religion is not in any power position in his country or in the West at all. And Christianity even, he barely touches, like, while it's actively dismantling his country. So strange that. But then get a load of his excellent reasons and airtight logic for defending Israel.
There's something like 15 million Jews on Earth at this moment. There are 100 times as many Muslims.
Yes, but Muslims, as I just said, are basically powerless in areas of the world that are relevant to Sam. That is, the most powerful countries in the world, the Western ones. In fact, many Muslim countries are terrified of and collaborating with the U.S. and Israel, despite the general sentiment amongst their own populations. So, yeah. Muslims generally have little to no influence in government and culture and law here, at least till now, really. Trump is perhaps letting Qatar give AIPAC some real competition, which is why Zionists are only now very loudly pissed about what has been perpetual, blatant corruption in the Trump administration. There are no significant number of jobs being lost for Islamophobia, no schools and universities being punished for Islamophobia, and there are certainly no students being grabbed off the streets for Islamophobia. But Okay, this was 2014, so we'll keep that out of it and just leave it at, it doesn't matter how many Muslims exist in the world. Defending Israel simply based on the number of Jews versus Muslims that exist is a very odd and silly reason. How many trans people exist in the world? Very, very few. And while I support and advocate for them as a minority group wholeheartedly, just like I do for Jews and Muslims, I would not support the trans equivalent of an ethno-state just because they're a small, marginalized group, and I would support it even less if that state was doing all sorts of unethical things in plain sight, like murdering innocent civilians for not being trans. Obviously, nothing like that exists, dear listeners, nor have I heard such a fashy thing being advocated for by trans people. In fact, the reverse is kind of what the right-wing governments want. They want to erase trans people from public life. Their hate and erasure is genocidal, and they basically do want a cis equivalent of an ethno-state, a gender state, where they do actually carry out violence towards people who don't fit that mold. So please note, that was just a purposely absurd example just to demonstrate how ludicrous Sam's reasoning is. And I know, it's not by any means a perfect analogy because you can't really compare gender and race or ethnicity. Very different things, but my main point was, being a small, historically persecuted group even doesn't justify a violent ethno-state. It just doesn't. And aside from that, I'd like to do a little compare and contrast exercise here. Of course, there are several conflicting aspects to Israel as a country, right? One being that it was founded as a country for a legitimately, horrifically persecuted group. But simultaneously, and this is a source of confusion and conflicted feelings for so many people, right? Simultaneously, its existence is and was, from its start, a very supremacist, violent colonial project, openly acknowledged in the early days when colonialism wasn't seen how it is today. So, I want you to listen to Sam's justification again, with that in mind, and compare it to this other clip I found from a 2002 documentary also by Louis Theroux, where he's talking to a white supremacist, neo-Nazi Afrikaner who was desperate to justify apartheid and racial segregation and white supremacy. Just listen to his reasoning and compare it to Sam's.
Yes.
Must be white,
Must
yes.
be white.
If we allow black people or non-white people to become poor people, then it will be the end of the existence of the poor people, because in South Africa alone, there are only 3.5 million against 40 million black people. There are only 3.5 million against 40 million black people.
There's something like 15 million Jews on Earth at this moment. There are 100 times as many Muslims.
There are only 3.5 million against 40 million black people.
So yeah, what is there to say, really?
And there are millions of Jews, literally millions among the few million who exist, for whom Judaism is very important, and yet they are atheists. They don't believe in God at all. This is actually a position you can hold within Judaism, but it's a total non sequitur in Islam or Christianity.
Okay, so we're defending ethno-states based on likelihood of being atheist now? Does that make an ethno-state justifiable? Really? Because a lot of very fashy new atheists would certainly agree. It's like that hard drive satire article from 2020 titled, "Heartwarming. Christian and atheist YouTubers used to hate each other, but now agree. The white race is under attack." So good. One of my all-time favorites. And also, what the fuck is he on about? How does he know that Muslims, like any other modern-day theist, won't pick and choose scripture or won't practice because many people today just hold the cultural part of their religious identity rather than the actively devout believing part? I know many, many people of Muslim background who aren't vocal atheists like myself, but they're also very meh and passive about religion. Why can't Muslims be seen as a diverse group with many levels of adherence and non-adherence, like all other faiths? Why must they always be reduced, in Sam's mind, to fundies or literalists of some sort? This is just a deeply stupid understanding of how humans interact with religion. I mean, it's very messy and contradictory in all groups. So this is really a non-point. Ethnostates can't be justified by someone's likelihood of not being religious, just like they can't be justified based on religion. Then he goes on about how he said many critical things about Judaism, like,
Let me remind you that parts of the Hebrew Bible, books like Leviticus and Exodus and Deuteronomy, are the most repellent, the most sickeningly unethical documents to be found in any religion.
Okay, again, I'm not interested in how thousands of year old scripture did not age well, because it's really not surprising that something written thousands of years ago doesn't hold up to our values today. And it's really rich coming from Sam, whose takes age poorly in like 10 minutes. I can't imagine what people hearing his podcast in 2,000 years would think of his values. So his flex about criticizing Judaism is meaningless and silly also. That again just doesn't expand beyond his religion bad bullshit.
They're worse than the Quran. They're worse than any part of the New Testament. But the truth is most Jews recognize this and don't take these texts seriously. It's simply a fact that most Jews and most Israelis are not guided by Scripture, and that's a very good thing.
Okay, tell that to the unhinged extremists in prominent positions in the Israeli government. Tell that to the genocide forces who are carving stars of David on the skin of helpless Palestinians. Tell that to Netanyahu, who invoked the biblical Amalek to justify this genocide. And even the secular Israelis are really not that much better. They're just using their secular colonial supremacy to fuel their desires and justifications for mass killing and rapes and torture of Palestinians. How civilized of them. Then he goes on to criticize the religious extremists in Israel, but really downplays their role in society and, of course, has to compare them to devout Muslims to really get his distaste for their religiosity across. Next, we get to the really whiplashy part of his Israel critique. Brace yourselves, hold on to your necks.
I don't think Israel should exist as a Jewish state. I think it is obscene, irrational, and unjustifiable.
Oh, you do you? Because you've spent the last couple of minutes justifying its existence in any possible way.
I think it is obscene, irrational, and unjustifiable to have a state organized around a religion.
Ah, there it is. Religion bad.
So I don't celebrate the idea that there's a Jewish homeland in the Middle East. And I certainly don't support any Jewish claims to real estate based on the Bible.
Yeah, it's only the Bible part you object to. Otherwise, we see you out there supporting the state of Israel, which itself is founded on a claim to real estate based on the Bible. Nice try, Sam. Okay, here's where it gets even wilder.
Though I just said that I don't think Israel should exist as a Jewish state, the justification for such a state is rather easy to find.
Well, look at that. I bet no one is surprised. Start off by saying you don't even think it should exist as a Jewish state. You think it's obscene and irrational. But hey, the justification is quite easy to find, actually. Just... wow. Is your head hurting yet? Is your neck okay?
We need look no further than the fact that the rest of the world has shown itself eager to murder the Jews at almost every opportunity.
So, historical persecution and genocidal violence against a specific group is a stain on humanity, something we should learn from and be deeply ashamed that we humans let it happen in the first place. But it does not justify an ethnostate. This is something that even early anti-Zionists were worried about, that sending Jews off from their various countries to a specifically Jewish state would only increase the othering and make it so that they're seen as outsiders in their own countries and told that they belong in the Jewish state. And that is not okay. They belong to many countries. There are Jewish people from all over the world. Anti-Semites were very on board with sending their country's Jewish people away to a Jewish state. As stated in an article in the Jewish publication Forward, titled, "It's Time to Admit that Arthur Balfour was a white supremacist and an anti-Semite too." The article is about then Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour of the Balfour Declaration, which, is the public statement issued by the British government in 1917 announcing its support for the establishment of a national home for Jewish people in Palestine. So, the Forward article says, Balfour saw in Zionism not just a blessing for Jews, but for the West as well. As he wrote in 1919, the Zionist movement would, quote, mitigate the age-long miseries created for Western civilization by the presence in its midst of a body which it too long regarded as alien and even hostile, but which it was equally unable to expel or absorb. Both by giving Jews a place to go and a place to leave, Zionism seemingly solved two problems at once in Balfour's mind. In other words, his support of Zionism was motivated to an extent by his desire to protect Britain from the quote-unquote miseries of having Jews in its midst. So yeah, that too is not such a great reason, Sam. And also, as far as safety and security of Jews is concerned, I'd say that Israel is an entirely failed project based on that. You cannot endlessly torture, starve, deprive, and subjugate a people and be expecting to live right next to them without any pushback because of Israel's own cruel policies. It's like the least safe place for Jewish people. So that argument doesn't work either.
So if there were going to be a state organized around protecting the members of a single religion, it certainly should be a Jewish state.
Wow, this is quite the 180 from what he said like in the same sentence before. I don't think Israel should exist as a Jewish state. It's obscene. But if you think about it, it really should exist as a Jewish state.
Needless to say, in defending its territory as a Jewish state, the Israeli government and Israelis themselves have had to do terrible things. They have, as they are now, fought wars against the Palestinians that have caused massive losses of innocent life.
Aw, won't anyone think of the poor Israelis who have just had to do so much killing? Like, that's really gotta be hard. This reminds me of a quote from Golda Meir, the fourth Prime Minister of Israel, as reported in Haaretz before anyone claims it's not a real quote. But she said, "We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children, but we can never forgive them for forcing us to kill their children." Won't someone think of the baby killers, please? It must be so difficult to have to do all that baby killing. Why can't the Arabs and their neo-Marxist woke sympathizers have a heart, eh? Stop forcing these good people to kill all those babies. It's all your fault they have to do that. Anyway, let's continue with the excuse making.
And there's probably little question over the course of fighting multiple wars that the Israelis have done things that amount to war crimes. They have been brutalized by this process.
What? Brutalized by the process of doing war crimes? What do you mean?
That is, made brutal by it.
Oh, that's what he means. A rather uncommon usage for the word brutalized, I'd say. But, wow, I'm amazed he's even admitting that at all. Surely he's not going to backtrack in the same breath, is he?
But that is largely due to the character of their enemies.
Okay, so them being brutal and doing war crimes is not their fault, actually. It's their evil enemies who made them do it. Sure. Just more of the same.
Whatever terrible things the Israelis have done, it is also true to say that they have used more restraint in their fighting against the Palestinians than we, the Americans and the Europeans, have used in any of our wars.
Maybe one could have said that in 2014, but I mean, with the torture and the abductions of children and the ongoing supremacy and apartheid and the Nakba, the gamifying of shooting people in the knees, I don't know. But okay, let's grant that you could say this in 2014. Boy, would you have egg on your face now. We are seeing the result of that so-called restraint in the present day, and it is total annihilation and obliteration of all of Gaza that you can literally see from space. So again, imagine existing in 2025 and not revising one's pathetic excuses or being embarrassed by them because everything you said was proven so wrong, but instead tripling and quadrupling down on such foolish excuses when the Israelis are documenting and posting their war crimes every minute of every day.
They have endured more worldwide public scrutiny than any society has ever had to, while defending itself against aggressors.
You see, this is what I mean when I say QAnon level of detachment from reality. If by public scrutiny he means endless impunity and cover-ups on behalf of, the silencing of critics and criticism, the denial of basic truths to protect Israel, the continuous cooperation, Western governments even breaking their own laws to continue to assist Israel in its murderous campaigns. I mean, this is a country that's been allowed to illegally continue its occupation, its apartheid, its mass starvation, and now it's live-streamed genocide without any intervention or sanctions, not even removal from singing contests or sports, despite the endless war crimes that even Sam accidentally briefly admitted to. How the fuck does that amount to more public scrutiny than any society? Just unbelievably, provably untrue.
The Israelis simply are held to a different standard.
Yes, well, I guess this is true, but in the exact opposite way of what Sam is portraying. There's an immense double standard in all the Western world when it comes to Israel. Of course there is. They certainly wouldn't tolerate this sort of thing by any other country.
And the condemnation leveled at them by the rest of the world is completely out of proportion to what they've actually done.
I can't believe this is Sam in his supposedly pre-Zionist era. It's just laughable. Things are about 1,000 times worse in 2025. Israel is mass murdering Palestinians on an unprecedented scale, starving the entire civilian population, eroding international law, flattening all of Gaza. All of this is completely unjustifiable if you're a decent, reasonable person, and the condemnation from the most powerful countries in the world, despite there being an ICC arrest warrant out for Netanyahu, barely exists. In fact, many countries have indicated they would defy the arrest warrant for the sake of Israel, and Sam's own country has, repeatedly. I mean, this is a level of untethered that is Alex Jonesian, practically.
This is where most critics of Israel appear to be stuck. They see these images, and they blame Israel for killing and maiming babies.
Yes?
They see the occupation, and they blame Israel for making Gaza a prison camp.
Yes. Actually, this part is interesting because he entirely denies the occupation now. In one of his 2023 Israeli propaganda episodes, he said, "There has been no occupation of Gaza since 2005, when Israel withdrew from the territory unilaterally. And the Israelis have been out of Gaza for nearly 20 years, and yet they have been attacked from Gaza ever since." Why are they being attacked, Sam? Is it because they're keeping a whole population hostage, maybe?
Now, I would argue that this is a kind of moral illusion, born of a failure to look at the actual causes of this conflict, as well as a failure to understand the intentions of the people on either side of it.
Yeah, some extremely non-Zionist behavior in 2014 here, eh? Defending Israel's murdering of children and its occupation, and claiming that anyone horrified by that is experiencing some kind of moral illusion, which is what's happening to Sam, in fact. In real time, we can see it, the super desperate denial and inversion of facts in the face of atrocities. It's like he hasn't grown or changed his talking points at all from 2014 to now. It's Sam who fails to look at the actual causes of the unrest and the conflict. When you storm in and take someone's house and then keep them hostage in a tiny room in their own house's basement, and then if they manage to break free, they are going to be fucking pissed and try to defend themselves and try to escape and try to get their house back. That is the cause of the conflict. It's not some random robotic jihad setting that Muslims are stuck on perpetually for no reason other than a command by ancient scripture. These supposed enemies of Israel are just fighting their captivity and the confiscation of their homes. It's easy as fuck to see, and Sam, as well as other defenders of Israel, just don't want you to see it. You cannot imprison, humiliate, subjugate, and torture a people indefinitely without experiencing their attempts to fight back. This is a moral illusion, actually, that there's any other reason. That it's because these people are just inherently barbaric or something. This is the illusion Sam wants you to hold in your mind while ignoring the blatant reality of a very unsustainable and unjust situation inflicted upon a whole population just because of who they are ethnically. As for the intentions of the people on either side, well, one side wants to stop being oppressed and just live their lives, and the other side wants to keep oppressing, depopulate, and steal. That's it. It's pretty fucking clear. We're watching it happen right now. Defending Israel is moral quicksand, in fact. You will keep sinking in. Like Sam, you too will lose your mind and humanity and rationality if you try to endlessly distort the facts to fit your version of reality.
The truth is that there is an obvious, undeniable, and hugely consequential moral difference between Israel and her enemies. The Israelis are surrounded by people who have explicitly genocidal intentions towards them.
Boy, has this aged poorly. Who the fuck is doing the genocide right now as we speak? Who is doing the mass rapes caught on video, used as a weapon? Who is? In the past year alone, Israel has bombed Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iran. It is Israeli soldiers who wear patches of their greater Israel fantasy, expressing their desire for Lebensraum. And this dumb fuck is complaining about how mean Israel's enemies are, and how the poor, widowed, genocidal apartheid state is just surrounded by people who have genocidal intentions. The moral difference between Israel and her enemies, he says. Firstly, what the fuck is it with these Israel defending creeps always using this archaic personification for this country, this damsel in distressification? Eric Weinstein did that too, I remember. The moral difference, Sam, is that Israel is the one doing the bombing and the killing and the threatening and the bullying in the whole fucking region. Its intentions are not pure. They are supremacist. They are expansionist. The way Israelis and Zionists generally talk about Arabs and Muslims as a whole is unbelievably Nazi-esque. That's the intention, backed by action, as we're seeing. He then quotes some Islamic scripture to justify his generalization of all of Israel's Middle Eastern enemies as genocidal. And again, I will say, this scripture is over 1,000 years old. This is not a reason to dehumanize multiple countries full of diverse people who interpret such scripture in various ways, or who ignore it, or plain old just aren't familiar with every fucking verse, for fuck's sake. There's plenty of atrocious scripture from other religions. No one reasonable holds every single person of a particular faith accountable for everything these ancient texts say. It's so childish, but so fucking dangerous too, because these kinds of generalizations are being used to justify mass slaughter. We've seen the demonization of Muslims based on these sorts of things for decades now in India as well, and they too are very inspired by Israeli methods, especially currently. Some are even calling for an Israel-like final solution to their Muslim problem. Anyway, then Sam talks about Palestinian children's shows that apparently teach hate. Well, firstly, the dynamics are such here that why wouldn't you hate your murderous, torturous oppressors? But of course, aside from that, we know this exists far more extensively and dangerously in Israel because they are the ones in power, armed to the fucking teeth. They have Lebensraum children's books about taking Lebanon. They have genocide cruises where families can go enjoy the views of Gaza being bombed. They have eclairs with genocidal messages being sold to children. Their society glorifies the terrorist and Nazi-like IDF to an unbelievable degree. They had a children's choir singing songs of annihilation, playing on a major TV channel. So this again is a one-sided criticism without any serious look at the party he's supposedly not a blind defender of yet. Like, fuck, if this is your pre-Zionist era, what the fuck is your Zionist era like?
And this gets to the heart of the moral difference between Israel and her enemies. And this is something I discussed in The End of Faith. To see this moral difference, you have to ask what each side would do if they had the power to do it.
I think we're seeing that right now, Sam.
What would the Jews do to the Palestinians if they could do anything they wanted?
And can we please stop conflating Jews with Israel or Israel's crimes? For fuck's sake, it is so blatantly anti-Semitic.
Well, we know the answer to that question, because they can do more or less anything they want. The Israeli army could kill everyone in Gaza tomorrow. So what does that mean?
Well, it means we've been watching them do that right now in 2025. They are starving everyone. There's no attempt to even go after Hamas specifically. They don't care about their hostages. And what a delusional excuse this is. Well, if they don't murder every single person, then how can you say they have evil intent? Because they could if they wanted, and they don't. And of course, this has shifted slightly in today's ongoing genocide to Sam saying things like, well, it's obviously not genocide because they didn't attempt to kill every last one of them, and they easily could. No. Firstly, starving everyone is exactly that, an attempt to kill every last one of them. And secondly, it's still a genocide, even if you don't manage a total eradication, as I've covered in another Woking Up episode. By this standard, the Holocaust wouldn't be a genocide because there were survivors. The Genocide Convention clearly says acts committed with intent to destroy a group in whole or in part. And anyway, with their reputation as damaged as it is, when they're trying sort of to deny what they're doing, they have to clearly not just go out and bomb everyone in one go, even if they have the capability, if they want to maintain any standing in the world at all, which they shouldn't be able to even now, despite not bombing everyone in one go. But let's continue with this stupid ass line of reasoning. Honestly, it should be beyond embarrassing at this point to hear these weak as fuck arguments that just don't hold up to any scrutiny at all. Hopefully more and more people across the political spectrum can see this.
Well, it means that when they drop a bomb on a beach and kill 4 Palestinian children, as happened last week, this is almost certainly an accident. They're not targeting children.
Yes, they fucking are, and they always have been. We've heard endless accounts of this from IDF soldiers themselves. We've heard of kill zones where everyone is considered a target, and more recently during this genocide, we've heard from doctor after doctor saying they were seeing a disproportionate number of children sniped in the fucking head. Even the pro-Israel New York Times had to eventually report on this, and they published photos of x-rays of children with bullets in their skulls. This is just a straight-up refusal to engage with the facts. He didn't in 2014, and he doesn't till this day.
They could target as many children as they want.
There's that point of, they could do it way worse, but they don't, so they must be the good guys. But then he himself describes exactly what might be restraining them. Not restraining them much anymore, I admit, but a little, maybe.
Every time a Palestinian child dies, Israel edges ever closer to becoming an international pariah.
Not close enough, considering the scale of their crimes, but yeah.
So the Israelis take great pains not to kill children and other non-combatants.
No, dear listeners, they do not. You can even read about this in Israeli papers. They literally have an AI system that helps them target people while they're home called Where's Daddy, literally named after their love of baby killing. And after these children are killed or displaced, these Nazi IDF fuckers take photos playing with their toys. Truly obscene and disgusting. Certainly not the actions of an army taking great care not to harm civilians or children. But let's keep going with Sam's supposedly pre-Zionism defenses and excuses.
Now, is it possible that some Israeli soldiers go berserk under pressure and wind up shooting into crowds of rock-throwing children?
He's willing to go all the way to defend the baby killing. Sure, maybe a few bad apples do it, but somebody think of how much pressure they're under. It's hard trying to exert dominance over 2 million people. Of course you're gonna go a little crazy and shoot at children sometimes.
Of course. You will always find some soldiers acting this way in the middle of a war. But we know that this isn't the general intent of Israel. We know that Israelis do not want to kill non-combatants, because they could kill as many as they want, and they're not doing it.
I think we very clearly know that this is the general intent of Israel now. Since we have thousands of genocidal statements expressing explicit intent to murder indiscriminately from politicians, soldiers, and high-ranking members of their military. The AI system Where's Daddy is developed to specifically kill non-combatants along with whoever their targets are, who are probably also targeted for bullshit reasons often, like just their age and gender.
What would the Palestinians do to the Jews in Israel if the power imbalance were reversed? Well, they have told us what they would do.
Who has? Every single Palestinian? Hamas? Well, they did moderate their charter, but who else? Is this rage maybe a response to being held hostage their whole lives and having their loved ones repeatedly murdered in front of them? Despite all this, they have tried everything from resisting peacefully, from civil disobedience, art. Anything they try, they end up being shot at.
We've already had a Holocaust and several other genocides in the 20th century. People are capable of committing genocide. When they tell us they intend to commit genocide, we should listen.
Except for when it's Israel, apparently. I mean, they've been telling us and showing us repeatedly during this past year and a half, but it's Sam who refuses to listen. Really recommend you check out the Two Nice Jewish Boys podcast, Sam.
There is every reason to believe that the Palestinians would kill all the Jews in Israel if they could. Would every Palestinian support genocide? Of course not. But vast numbers of them, and of Muslims throughout the world, would.
These empty hypotheticals are all he has to continue justifying the mass slaughter of Palestinians, which is actually happening right now. Those are real concrete actions that he chooses to ignore, and it's the same today as it was in 2014. He makes the same types of excuses even now, and this type of excuse making is present in every case of supremacist subjugation. According to the Nazis, the Jews were a threat to them. White South Africans said the black population was a threat to them, too, to justify apartheid. White Americans justified segregation by talking about the dangers of integration. The Jim Crow system was upheld by beliefs like Sam's, saying that white people were not just intellectually superior to black people, which Sam also says, but morally superior too. And that's the same kind of difference that Sam is implying here between Israelis and Palestinians. They're just more moral, you see, if you don't look at what they're doing. And as for the Palestinians, even though they aren't doing any such thing, Sam just knows. They would probably do a genocide if they could. No, don't look at that genocide that's happening right now. Look away from it. Their enemies made them do it, okay? They have to kill those babies. It's so hard on them because they're so moral, unlike those Palestinians.
The truth is that everything you need to know about the moral imbalance between Israel and her enemies can be understood on the topic of human shields. Who uses human shields? Well, Hamas certainly does.
Ah, yes, this old talking point that they're still using today. But, even back in 2014, it was reported by the BBC's Middle East editor that he saw no evidence of Hamas using Palestinians as human shields. There was an article in The Independent titled "The Myth of Hamas as Human Shields." There were already reports of the IDF using Palestinians as human shields. And there are many more reports today, with accompanying photos too now. It's the IDF that uses Palestinians as human shields. As policy, that's been proven repeatedly. And thinking logically for a second, it would be pointless for Hamas to try using their own people as human shields because that clearly doesn't deter the IDF. How these excuses are stretched to fit any kind of situation is by saying that Hamas fires from densely populated areas. But where can they go? This is not a normal country or military where they can make a base somewhere far away. It's a 25-mile-long strip of land where the entire population is trapped from every angle. So where can they go?
They shoot their rockets from residential neighborhoods, from beside schools and hospitals and mosques.
Okay, so let's say that they do fire from civilian areas. Is this a unique Arab or Muslim or Hamas evil? No. In fact, even in 2014, Israeli critics of this war, like Gideon Levy, wrote that in their own war of independence in 1948, Jews hid weapons in synagogues, kindergartens, and schools as well. And as you've probably seen, plenty of people point out that the IDF headquarters and Shin Bet, as well as an Israeli military training facility, are all also located near civilian centers. Should that justify the bombing of the entire country? Entire neighborhood? Bombing of hospitals in the area? Schools? I think we know that Sam's answer would be no. Because anyone can see that's a ludicrous, barbaric thing to do when people you actually consider human are at risk.
Consider the moral difference between using human shields and being deterred by them.
Juxtapose those words in your mind with images of the IDF using Palestinian human shields, even frail elders. We don't have any pictures of Hamas doing this, but we have pictures of the IDF doing it over and over and over again. So juxtapose that with Sam's words, as well as, the pictures of all of Gaza, just raised, entirely flattened, and try to understand the absurdity of what he's saying. Because it's not like he's not saying this anymore, and he was just saying it in 2014. Oh no, he's still using this line. Do those images that I've described make any sense at all with what Sam is saying here? What would be the point of using human shields to deter a killing force as indiscriminate as the IDF? Just look at the pictures of Gaza and even the percentages of civilians killed in 2014, 65 to 70%. The human shields thing clearly has no effect, so why would anyone continue to use it?
That is the difference we're talking about. The Israelis and other Western powers are deterred, however imperfectly.
There's that little Sam Harris-esque wiggle room. Look, I said they were deterred imperfectly, okay? And by that, I mean that explains the majority civilian death toll.
Are deterred, however imperfectly, by the Muslim use of human shields in these conflicts. By the Muslim use of human shields in these conflicts. Muslim use of human shields.
Well, look at that. He's switched from Hamas to not just Palestinian even, but Muslim use of human shields. Tarring all Muslims with this. It's stunning, really. How open and naked he can be with his bigotry and still be considered better than the most deranged MAGA types. I don't recall my Muslim parents using us as human shields. I think I'd remember that. But anyway, what was he saying about the amazing moral Westerners and the evil human shield using Muslims?
The Israelis and other Western powers are deterred, however imperfectly, by the Muslim use of human shields in these conflicts, as we should be. It is morally abhorrent to kill non-combatants if you can avoid it. It's certainly abhorrent to shoot through the bodies of children to get at your adversary.
How about when you're directly shooting children in the head, Sam? Not to get at someone else, but to kill them. How morally abhorrent is that, huh? And I wonder why Sam isn't proportionately outraged by these repeated intentional killings by Israel, endlessly documented, by reporters and doctors with accompanying photos, endlessly documented. Where are his condemnation episodes about the IDF's usage of human shields?
The Muslims are acting on the assumption, the knowledge in fact, that the infidels with whom they fight, the very people whom their religion does nothing but vilify, will be deterred by their use of Muslim human shields.
Like, how does someone have the confidence to be this embarrassingly wrong till this day on this specific issue? And again, note his frothing at the mouth language here. Muslim versus infidel. Like, this is just a guy itching for a race war, but with religion as the pretext. And he's getting to see his wildest fantasies come true these days, the eradication of at least one group of those pesky barbaric Muslims. Can you see the moral difference here? We're just better. So moral.
Now imagine reversing the roles here. Imagine how fatuous, indeed how comical it would be for the Israelis to attempt to use human shields to deter the Palestinians. Some claim that they have already done this. There are reports that Israeli soldiers have occasionally put Palestinian civilians in front of them as they've advanced into dangerous areas. That's not the use of human shields we're talking about. It's egregious behavior. No doubt it constitutes a war crime.
You see how easy it is for him to minimize and just wave away human shields when it comes to the IDF? He'll say, yeah, it's bad, it's a war crime, but look over here at those Palestinians who are really evil, even though I've provided no evidence of this. The Israelis aren't using human shields, you see. They just occasionally put Palestinians in front of them when they're advancing into dangerous areas.
Israeli soldiers have occasionally put Palestinian civilians in front of them as they've advanced into dangerous areas. That's not the use of human shields we're talking about. But imagine the Israelis holding up their own women and children as human shields. Of course, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, Sam, because they would just hold up Palestinian ones.
The Palestinians are trying to kill everyone. Killing women and children is part of the plan.
This, but the exact opposite, actually. It's Israelis that are trying to kill everyone. Killing women and children is part of their plan. They bombed a fucking IVF center, destroying 4,000 embryos, just to ensure that even this form of potential life does not remain.
Reversing the roles here produces a grotesque Monty Python skit.
Sure, if that sketch is about Israelis doing genocide while claiming to be the victims, maybe.
If you're going to talk about the conflict in the Middle East, you have to acknowledge this difference. I don't think there's any ethical disparity to be found anywhere that is more shocking or consequential than this.
What is there to say, really? Because we don't have to imagine, especially in 2025, we are seeing it in action. The Palestinians never had this sort of power or weaponry or even just bloodlust.
Where are the demonstrations, 10,000, 100,000 deep, in the capitals of Europe against ISIS?
Deflection is something Israel defenders also love because they just can't engage with reality as it is, so they have to point the finger elsewhere. And pointing that finger at ISIS is just like the lowest hanging fruit, an obvious, brutal, and barbaric terrorist group that every decent person despises, including Muslims. But holding protests against them would be pointless because who are you appealing to with those protests? ISIS? The terrorist group? Are you expecting them to listen to demands of protesters? I mean, regarding Israel, many of the protests are against our own Western institutions and governments who aid and abet this monstrous nation, who assist by giving them weapons and funding through our own tax dollars. That's what people are often protesting, an appeal to their own governments, who aren't assisting ISIS in any widespread, broad, institutional manner like they do Israel, except for Israel itself, which is kind of sort of assisting them. That's right. In November of last year, Israeli paper Haaretz published a piece titled, "The Israeli Army is allowing gangs in Gaza to loot aid trucks and extort protection fees from drivers." And they claim that the IDF just encourages and turns a blind eye to this looting of aid trucks because of course they would. And some of these looting gangs that the IDF was protecting and encouraging were, dun dun dun, affiliated with ISIS. So yeah, people protesting their own governments and universities and workplaces' involvement with Israel makes sense. It's personal. Their tax dollars, their work in some cases, is used to assist in the Israeli genocide. Who would they protest when it comes to ISIS? And regardless, there have been solidarity marches after Islamist terrorist attacks. But this is just another way to deflect from the issue and not engage with what Israel is doing.
And yet Muslims can destroy their own societies and seek to destroy the West, and you don't hear a peep.
What the fuck is he talking about? All that the right wing here in the West does is obsess over Muslims, including Sam himself. All his peeps for years have been about Muslims. What does he mean you don't hear a peep? This is just such whiny brat shit. But what about those other guys? Why don't you say anything to them? Why are you always picking on Israel? Dude, have you ever listened to Western media at all? All they do is talk about Muslims and deny what Israel is doing.
So it seems to me you really have to side with Israel here. You have one side which, if it really could accomplish its aims, would simply live peacefully with its neighbors. And you have another side which is seeking to implement a 7th century theocracy in the Holy Land. There's no peace to be found between these incompatible ideas.
One just has to look at the satellite images of an entirely destroyed Gaza to know how full of shit Sam is. We've heard the Israelis specify their genocidal aims again and again and again. Hamas is not ISIS. They don't even like each other, for fuck's sake. Their aims are not the same. Hamas has very specific Palestinian nationhood and self-determination-based aims. There's no peace to be found between these parties because Israel has the morals of ISIS, but the impunity, weapons, and funding of the most powerful countries in the world.
Even on their worst day, the Israelis act with greater care and compassion and self-criticism than Muslim combatants have anywhere ever.
So notice how he says Israelis in general are more caring and compassionate even on their worst days, but then he compares them to Muslim combatants. Why that comparison? It's clearly designed to make the Muslim side seem worse. Oh, yeah, well, Muslim combatants gotta be way worse than general Israelis. He knows what he's doing when he flows in and out of using Palestinians to Muslims, to using combatants to compare with Israelis as a whole. Anyway, his comparison is still wrong because Israel as a country has displayed far more genocidal, barbaric, murderous behavior than Hamas or ISIS ever could, as was mentioned in that report by Euromed Monitor that I brought up earlier in this episode. And since we're talking about how noble and moral the Israelis are, let me just share this quote from a Guardian article in 2014. Palestinians returning to their homes during the ceasefire reported that IDF soldiers had trashed their homes, destroyed home electronics such as TV sets, spread feces in their homes, and carved slogans such as "Burn Gaza Down" and "Good Arab equals Dead Arab" in walls and furniture. The IDF did not respond to requests for comment by The Guardian. Most moral army in the world, hey?
This kind of confusion puts us all in danger. This is the great story of our time. For the rest of our lives, and the lives of our children, we're going to be confronted by people who don't want to live peacefully in a secular, pluralistic world, because they are desperate to get to paradise.
Or because they want a supremacist Jewish ethno-state.
And they're willing to destroy the very possibility of human happiness along the way. The truth is, we are all living in Israel. It's just that some of us haven't realized it yet.
Yes, actually, that is so true. We absolutely are. But not in the way Sam means it, of course. We are because our governments are censoring us on an unprecedented scale if we dare to speak out against Israel's atrocities. Our movies are being silenced, articles are being suppressed, newsrooms are instructed not to use certain words, students have been kidnapped and detained for simply voicing critical opinions of Israel. Our money is funding these crimes, our police departments and governments are using Israeli surveillance tech to take away our rights. We are all kind of living there. Yeah. That's why we must fight this bullshit, this silencing, this criminalization of boycotts and peaceful protests, because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's unleashing a whole new era of fascism into our own countries. And sometime far into the future, when your grandkids ask you what you did or said in times of the first live stream genocide, you won't be able to say you didn't know. Let your answer be something that you won't be ashamed of. Don't be like Sam. Thanks for listening to Woking Up. You can support this show by sharing it or via patreon.com/nice mangoes. No Ian Mangoes. And a special thanks to Intellectual Darkwave for helping out on the musical front.